Hi, I'm Mark Mancini with VRBO Outstanding and Vacation Home Mastery. This week is the finale of John Slaughter with Rental Guardian, answering some of the last key questions regarding costs and other things. So stay tuned. Welcome back this week. This is the finale. This is the final bunch of questions and probably the most important questions, John, I'm going to start off with. How is Rental Guardian and travel insurance priced? I mean, is there, I guess, price per stay? How does that all work out?
Well, that's a great question. So we have two programs, and they're both a percentage of the cost of the trip. And that would be considered the grand total, because depending on what you've signed with whatever person you bought the vacation from, it could, you might have taxes and fees and all kinds of other things built in that might be non-refundable. So if you just protected the rent part of it, but yet they kept your taxes, then if you don't cover the taxes, you can't claim the taxes. So many times what will happen is, like, for instance, somebody will put travel insurance on the entire grand total, which is what we recommend. So that way you're always protected. But then maybe they get a $400 cleaning fee back. Okay, so you got that money back, and then you file a claim for the remaining part of the amount of money that you lost. And travel insurance is not meant to have you come out ahead. It's meant to make you whole again, or as best as it can make you whole again, depending on what program it is. And as you know, we have the standard program would be 100% reimbursement, or we like to say up to 100% reimbursement, because, like I said, you might get some of that money back, but not part of it. So then you would file a claim for the part that you lost.
Right, and that was actually my follow-up question is that, what kind of percentage is it reimbursed? And you mentioned last week $1,000 luau, so you're actually able to add things like that to that amount.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're, for instance, it's nice to have everything all on one. As a traveler, as a property manager, you're thinking, as a property manager. But if you thought like your traveler, giving them the opportunity to cover everything with you not only gives you a better value add by offering it to your guests to be able to say, hey, here's the travel insurance, and book not only your stay, but any excursions and airline trips and rental cars and things of that nature, sporting equipment if you're going skiing and such, to have it all in one place. So that way, when, let's say, for instance, something tragic happens and a loved one was lost due to a illness or something of that nature, and now you've got all of the added emotional pressure, and you have to file claims with 4 or 5 different entities to try and get your money back, it's just adding more headache to the guests. So by offering travel insurance, you basically give them a way not only to protect themselves against any sort of cancellation clauses they sign with you to get their money back, but also a way to be able to protect their entire trip, which is a great way to be able to offer additional value add as a property manager.
So how long does it take to be compensated with Rental Guardian if they file a claim?
That's a great question. And, the time varies because the ability to be able to get the documentation to prove whatever happened is different. So it's not so much that there's a difference in approval time. What Nationwide has told us, and they are fantastic at this, the minute that the claim is documented and it's approved, then they issue a wire or however they want that money to be reimbursed. It's just a matter of being able to, excuse me, being able to prove and or provide the documentation. So for instance, in the case of like you had COVID, right? A home COVID test would not be adequate to prove that you had COVID. What you would need is you would need something from a doctor or an approved provider that provided a test with then a printout of that. If you don't have that, you need to go get it or get a copy of it in order to be able to file a claim that you had COVID and you were told that you couldn't go. Same with like a dog or a cat passing away. It's unfortunate, but people are like, well, how do I prove my dog or cat died? There are different ways. If they were having, if they were put to sleep, then obviously there's a documentation that was provided from a vet. If they were cremated, which, we had our pets cremated and keep a little casket of them, in a safe place, then we have that proof that we paid for them to be cremated. Just something, the travel insurance providers, Nationwide specifically, are not trying to add heartache and headache on top of what's already happened. They're just trying to say, look, we're going to give you your money back. Just help us understand and prove that this is what you had. Because if somebody was not telling the truth and they said, oh, this happened, then obviously they're not going to get their money back. So there just has to be some documentation, and then the money is released immediately.
Gotcha. So basically, no weekend at Bernie's thing where the arms hang in, right? So,
Yeah,
um,
trust me, I'm sure people have tried that.
so I guess one of the questions I'm going to have to you, I always ask people, to put your money where your mouth is. What's your satisfaction rate? Do you have a high repeat set of customers?
That's a great question. In doing that, being asked that question, I've actually been asked that question just probably a few weeks ago. And I just went for the heck of it to Google and Googled nationwide travel insurance. And I was pleased to see that there are over 10,000 reviews in Google with 4.8 stars. So I'm going to say that it's pretty high, because Google is an unsolicited, entity where, I don't go to a new doctor without looking at their Google reviews. I don't buy any service without looking at somebody's Google reviews. And it's just a great trusted way as a non-biased third party to be able to provide some background. You go to other providers and they're not as favorable. And so, you always want to try and go with somebody that has a wealth of people that have spoken highly. And that's really the best you can do. And Google's a great provider of that. So I was pleased to find that we had such a high ranking with Google and the stars, but I was unsure. I know we do a great job, but until you see it right there, 4.8 over 10,000, I was like, okay, that's awesome.
And when you're talking numbers, 10,000, 4 point, that's huge. So definitely people at home who are watching this should feel comfortable when they refer this. And so, just to follow up on that, one last question I had for you is, how does Rental Guardian differ from some of the others? I know you talked about some of those things in the first episode, but is there anything else that really separates you besides you're backed by Nationwide?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, our integrations are key. The ease of getting the program, many times with other providers, they're given, an access point, but then they have to instruct the guest to call somebody and get on a phone and be put on hold. With us, we have electronic ways that people can get it all hours, day or night, which is very simple and easy. We also have 2 programs that we feature where most other providers, if not all, only offer one. We have a standard and an enhanced version, which is cancel for any reason. And if you have, for instance, if someone says they have cancel for any reason, they have all of the benefits of the standard program at 7% times trip cost for 100% reimbursement for any one of those over 30 standard covered reasons. So when you have cancel for any reason, it's basically you get all of the standard benefits at 100% reimbursement for the 30 standard covered reasons that are listed in the policy. But you also have that additional benefit for if one of the reasons you have to cancel is not listed in the policy, which would then be the for any reason benefit. And by having that benefit, you have a nice backup benefit to then receive a 60% reimbursement for that for any reason. So for instance, let's say it was a hurricane and you were interrupted or impacted, and you received 100% reimbursement. That's going to be under the standard program. But when you have cancel for any reason, you have all those benefits, but you also have the added benefit of, let's say the hurricane made a right turn or a left turn, and instead of hitting the impact zone where it was going to go, it's now just going to sideswipe your destination, and the outer bands of rain are just basically going to make it a miserable week to be where you're going. And in that particular case, then standard protection would not be a hurricane benefit because you're probably not going to be impacted. But your cancel for any reason is a perfect way to then call up more than 2 days prior to arrival, which is the time frame to do so, and say, you know what, I'm just not going to come. And it could be because of rain, or it could be for any reason, which is why it's called that. But it's a great value added benefit to have a better best scenario than just the standard program alone. And that's why most folks, when offered that program, will automatically enhance their travel insurance to the for any reason, because why wouldn't you have that backup benefit just in case?
And great points, Sean, because honestly, as we've stated before, vacations are needed, right? You need to clear out your mental state for work, for life in general. And canceling a vacation, I it should be an extreme circumstance. And that's where your coverage is key. I mean, it's funny you mentioned in the previous episode appendicitis, because 11 months ago, I was here in the Keys, and in the middle of the night, I felt discomfort around my umbilicus. And my wife, thankfully, is a physician. And I waited till the morning. I didn't want to wake her up. Waited till the morning. I said, I think we're going to the hospital. Now, luckily, it was at my own vacation rental, but same day surgery is, and laparoscopically is just amazing. But things happen, right? And things is usually changed out by another word, right? Things happen. And the reality is having that protection. When you think about the cost of a vacation, the small percentage that this isn't a lot. And what I also tell people too is the couple. You want to protect the host and you want to protect the owner. This protects, I'm sorry, the host and the guest. This protects the guest. And then also with owner res, with their accidental damage protection, that protects the owner if a guest accidentally damages something. And then we even talk about a third method of protection, which is that deposit. When it's not an accident, a guest maybe does something intentionally. They have a party, they smoke, they do something. And that's where the deposit's coming in. So having the host have that protection is great. But then being able to offer protection to the guest is that value add you discussed, helps making that direct book experience as we try to not rely on the platforms, but do direct bookings to be like the big boys, right? And to offer this type of service so that the guest doesn't have to go to a third party. But again, using your link, whether they're with Airbnb or they don't have owner res, but again, many of the PMS systems for host and vacation rental owners have this integration with you guys, and that's key, right? The technology that you guys built in to API integrate and to make it a seamless part of the process, so it's an extension from that host and not just they're pointing off to you guys, right?
100%. Having that as a host, having that peace of mind, knowing that you're giving your guests an opportunity to be able to protect themselves, whether they choose to do so or not is up to them. But when you have to stand firm and keep that money, to be able to say, well, gosh, if you'd only taken it, you would have gotten your money back for that hurricane that came, right? Or things of that nature. You are putting, yourself in a position of less awkward conversations down the road. When somebody wants their money back from canceling and they have travel insurance, it's such an easy process to just point them in the right direction, have them get their money back, and you protect your business, which at the end of the day, like you mentioned, it's the vacation rental business is what you're in. And I see far too many people just giving money back and then, or giving somebody a voucher for next year and they're coming back. So you're already burning next year's inventory, which means your profits are coming down because now you've got half as much. You take half this year, half next year. Now you're discounting yourself and losing that opportunity, which is putting money into your business. So travel insurance can certainly be a great part of that.
That's an excellent point. I just want to follow up with that before we close up. Is many people will say, well, I'll just reschedule them. And that's fine if two things come into play. Number one, you're rebooking that period, but then also you're putting them on next year's rate, which is usually always higher because prices always go up, right? And not just crediting them for another week or whatever it is the following year and just making it equal, because you are going to be losing money that way. Whereas if they had the responsibility, right, to go ahead and purchase the insurance, which, let's face it, we all have cars and homes and we purchase insurance for all that, health insurance, et cetera. But then to not have insurance when you go on vacation, when you're spending several $1,000s for the week, is something that, people do need to be more cognizant of, and not just, expect the host to go ahead and accept their cancellation because something came up. And that is why we defer them to their travel insurance, because that was offered when they checked out. And if they decline that, then they have to figure out a way to work around that, right? And so, it is tough. It's tough medicine, right? But the reality is you're over 18, you're a financially and fiscally responsible person. You enter a contract and decision. And when we check out, I know with VRBO, there's, I think, 3 or 4 check boxes that state this is a non-cancellation policy. They make sure you know that. So if you go through it and you want to cancel or reschedule, you were told. So I'm glad that your company, Rental Guardian, is there. And John, I apologize for the reference to the 80s hairband, but I'm an 80s hairband type of guy, and they were a great band. So
They
when
were.
I got
They
introduced
were.
to you,
I actually, hey, you're talking my language. I actually tried to get into a concert one time in Henderson, Nevada, where they were playing, and I showed them my ID, and they said, "Yeah, nice last name, but you're not getting in." So I had to buy a ticket. Oh well.
darn it. But anyway, so I'm glad you're okay with that, because again, it's some great music. Again, Slaughter, they had 3 or 4 great songs, and if you're an MTV generation when they actually played videos, you'll know what I'm talking about. I think that's a lot of our hosts. They went through that phase of the 80s, and then things changed, and MTV didn't become a video channel. So
Exactly right.
it's been a pleasure to speak with you, John. The information over these 3 episodes has been great, and I appreciate your time. I know for those of you who don't know, John's been a little under the weather. We were a little sketched. We weren't sure if we're going to make this episode, but he piled down some water, and I appreciate him weathering through. And I'm sure it's going to help thousands of our watchers on YouTube. And again, thanks again for everyone else out there. Remember, like, subscribe, comment, and vacationhomemastery.com. It's our 12 steps to guarantee you more bookings and more money or your money back. And our magnum opus, our VRB Outstanding course, which takes you from 0 to race car driver in Indy 500 in no time. In fact, we even added a practice management portion of the course, so that after you become VRB Outstanding, you can manage other people's properties, easily making 6 figures without having to buy more homes. And that's what you want to do. Again, hit like and subscribe below. We'll see you again next week. Thanks again, John.
Pleasure.